Yo, what's poppin' peeps? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. How's it going? Today we're going to be covering over the late night number 30 results, the last late night of number 3, season number 3. So we're going to be going over the top 16 players, or the best decks, basically anything that made top cut at the event. And that's really what I'd like to focus on when we're going through this event. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. So we had over 340 players play in this event. Starting off at number 16, it's Josh Frink. Josh Frink is a great player, by the way. Totally check them out. They're playing some kind of Zoroark Wormadam deck. Wormadam does more damage for the Pokemon in your discard pile, so it naturally makes sense for this deck to play things like Make Do. The Zoroark package works out really nicely so that you can kind of summon different attackers, and I do think that Moltres can be quite efficient against the metagame, especially considering Mew is the best deck. Now, this is one of those things where I don't necessarily have any comments on this deck because I haven't tried it out myself. I do not know that Josh Frink is an amazing player, and I think that this list is probably about as refined as you can get it for the metagame right now. Decks like this usually are good towards the end of the metagame, or that's when the metagame gets more solved. So overall, there's a lot of cool techs in here. This might be a really cool single prize card deck to try. Maybe I'll get a chance to cover it on the channel, but shout out to Josh on such a great placement. Moving on to number 15, we have my home slice Ben Lulu Bro playing Arceus V-Star with Malamar VMAX. So the goal of this deck is to power up Arceus, roll with it, then you power up Malamar, and you hit your opponent with the Path Dark type, Malamar's Max Jammer, the Barrel's extra draw supports. Honestly, I really don't see any problems with this list. This list looks really tight. I do want to see how their day played out, though, a little bit. So it looks like they had quite a good start beating some Mew decks, hitting some Mew decks. This deck basically beats Mew. So overall, an absolute wonderful finish. They eventually lost to Arceus and Inteleon, and I think that seems kind of fair when it comes down to it. Like, I think Arceus and Inteleon may or may not be a bad matchup for other Arceus decks. So Arceus and Inteleon usually beats those other decks. We'll have to see how it plays out. Let's move on to number 14. Samuel Chalk playing Mew VMAX. Mew VMAX being the best deck of the format. So right now we see a pretty typical Mew VMAX line. Cross Fusion Strike is going to be able to copy Techno Blast, Melodious Echo, etc., etc. Max Miracle goes through whatever you want. Or Choreo is like semi-standard in the deck. I think some players are playing it, some players aren't, depending if they're trying to beat single prize card matchups a little bit easier or not. I really don't see anything wrong with this list. I mean, there are no basic Psychic Energy, so it's going heavy on the double turbo energies. I do see a few players playing that. I do see a little bit light on the stadiums. I mean, with Arceus and Inteleon kind of popping off at this event, any event after this, you want to be playing 4 stadiums. So far, the deck looks on trends. Can't really say what it's missing off the top of my head. It's missing Fog Crystal. Obviously, you're not going to play Fog Crystal. You have it, so you get a little bit of extra space there. So that's obviously a cool run. We're going to be moving on to Resolution playing Arceus Raladon. One thing that I do want to note is that this particular event had quite a few different decks in the top cut. So that's really interesting. We see Arceus Raladon. This deck won the Full Grip Games event. So the whole goal is to use Arceus, accelerate energies onto the Raladon. There's the 2-3 line. I know people always ask me, why does it play a 2-3 line? You don't want to start with Raladon V, and the benefit is much higher. Even if you prize a Raladon V, or even if you prize both Raladon V, you still have Rapid Strike Mustard. And of course, as we see with Arceus and Inteleon, Arceus is its own standalone deck and can hold its own. I mean, there's really no issues with this list. I do think if you are playing Crystal Cave, that it is much nicer to play Hyper Potion and Crystal Cave. So I'd like to see a little bit more of a healing focus. But beyond that, you're just using that Raladon to stop your opponent with special energies, and it's the tank that it was. Really solid deck build over here, although this deck in popularity does seem to be falling off a little bit more to the Arceus Inteleon build. So I want to see what their matchups were. So a little bit of a shaky 5-3-1, winning it back at the full 5-0 there. So ended up losing to decks. I don't know how the Rapid Strike deck really got through the Raladon deck. Maybe it was just a quick Arceus pass or something like that, but a really interesting day overall. Eventually losing to Mew. Mew does get through it, so I think that's one of the reasons why players aren't necessarily flocking to the event or anything else like that. So we're going to actually, I went back one too many. We're going to be moving on to Gabe Shumway, another one of my homies. I love seeing all my pals in Top Cut. I appreciate everyone who plays in these events. Playing Malamar. Malamar is about ripping those Rapid Strike tentacles and pitching those back into your deck. Do 40 damage at a pop, so you got a lot of Rapid Strike cards. Minccino with Call for Family breathes new life into this deck. The deck already played Minccino, so why not play the better Minccino that can search things out? Cynthia's Ambition can now draw more cards. So overall, I think this list looks really good. I don't know if I like Battle VIP Pass because it's kind of wasteful after everything else on the first turn, but it's also not too bad. I've never struggled with basic Pokemon in play. Maybe Brawly would just be more on point for a deck like this. So we'll have to see. Like, I think this list is fine. There are some changes that I would make about it. I do like playing double Ordinary Rod. I do think that Brawly would be more on trend. I think Pokemon Catchers might even be better than Boss's Orders. We'll have to see exactly what's going on there. But great job overall to Gabe. I want to see exactly where they struggled with. They had an amazing 7-2. They had a 3-1-1. Eventually losing to Ice Rider. I think that maybe Ice Rider was able to go through with quick shootings and things such as that. So that was solid over there on their behalf. Let's see exactly where else we're at. Am I scrolling through? I somehow found a way to go back. So we'll go through the whole process of going through the completed tournaments. You can see there's the late nights. Not hard to find it all on the website. We're going to be going to Master Li Bui, one of the best players online right now. Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX is going to be all about Ride of the High King or using Max Lance. You really go Ride of the High King if you're not getting an OHKO, or you're going for Max Lance if you're trying to aim for that OHKO. Remember that you have damage modifiers in the form of Quick Shooting, Leon, and Choice Belt. This deck also has Path to the Peak, which could be particularly good if you are going against Mew. So it is one of those things where the deck has a lot of more damage output because of Choice Belt. I would like to see Ultra Ball in this deck because it does work well with Melanie, accelerating energies, and things such as that. That's one thing that I would like to see. But right now, I mean, I really don't have any issues with this list. I don't know if I like Lumineon in Ice Rider. I think I like it more in Suicune, just because it's not immediate, and you already have Drizzile that can search things out. So I'd actually like to see the Lumineon cut right now. I actually had it in my list for a little bit and then decided that otherwise. So I mean, it's probably personal preference, but overall, this list looks really good. Shout out to Li Bui for the great list there. I just want to make sure that I didn't skip anyone. I have this bad habit of skipping people, and I want to make sure everyone's featured. We got doubles, another one of the homies, playing another Arceus Raladon deck. This deck running very similar to the one that we just saw, except instead of going all Crystal Caves, there's a bit of a Collapse Stadium. I don't think there's really much change. There's probably like one change beyond that. Again, I do like the Crystal Cave with Hyper Potion version. But beyond that, solid job to doubles. Great job overall. Moving on to Josh Sutherland, another one of the homies. Also just started coaching on Metafy, so check them out there. Jolteon VMAX really bringing it back. A lot of players are like, do you worry about Manaphy? Do you not worry about Manaphy? These are the whole important questions. In this case, Josh decided not to worry about it. Jolteon VMAX doing 100 damage to the active, 100 damage to the bench. Manaphy blocking that bench damage. Not too many people are playing Manaphy because not too many people are playing Jolteon. Ta-da! Also, Rapid Strike Urshifu is taking a bit of a step back just due to players playing a lot of Mew VMAX, so it's a pretty good time to play Jolteon, especially if you're able to kind of just avoid some poor matchups here and there. Overall, this deck is looking well constructed. Quick Shooting, Zigzagoon. I really don't see any changes that I'd like to make. Maybe just like cutting something for a second Ultra Ball. Most of the time I do like double Ultra Ball, but we'll have to see. I don't know. I think it seems fine. Again, Jolteon VMAX is a little difficult to deal with right now, but it is one of those things where we'll have to see how it continues to go on. I don't know why I'm lost for thoughts or anything like that, but we'll see exactly. Shout out to Josh. They've been crushing it with it. I think they also won an event later on that week. We have Jace Patrick playing an Arceus toolbox kind of deck. This deck has seemed to fall in popularity due to Arceus Inteleon and Arceus Raladon. but I do think it still holds a lot of merit. Having a lot of correct attackers in correct matchups is cool. So you use Arceus to accelerate energies around, and Moltres is good against Mew decks, and Zapdos is good against Arceus decks and Gengar decks, and all your different attackers are pretty cool, and even Yveltal can discard a bunch of special energies. I mean, I like all the different things you can search out, even all the different supporters. So this deck might fall a little bit more on the difficult side to play, but it does look like a well-constructed list. Again, similar to Josh Frink's list, these types of decks seem to get better towards the end of the formats as things progress. So solid list overall, solid player overall. We'll leave it at that. I mean, Arceus V-Star can be built a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different techs. I see some players play Zomba Sense of V for Ice Rider, some players don't. It's really personal preference. We're going to be moving on to Jonathan Patricio, seeing another Ice Rider deck. So Ice Rider here, they do play a Suicune, no Lumineon. You can see it's a little bit different than Lee Bui's list. Again, a lot of it's going to be personal preference. Instead of Lumineon, going for Crobat, which I kind of agree with, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. I think Jonathan Patricio knows what they're doing, so it seems completely normal to see them in the top cuts. Then, yeah, I think it's one of those things where their list looks great. I want to see exactly how their run went. I know that I haven't checked out for every single person, but I do like to periodically check out to see how decks do. 7-2 start, losing to Arceus and losing to Malamar. I think that's fine. They ended up going 3-1-1. Beating the Malamar deck and then losing to Ice Rider Inteleon. Or sorry, Arceus Inteleon, not Ice Rider. They are playing Ice Rider, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But solid job to them overall. We will be moving on to Andy Gantner playing Mew VMAX. So again, another Mew VMAX list. One thing that I do want to see from these Mew VMAX lists is a second double Turbo Energy at the very least. I think it's very good. They did play triple Psychic Energy to get around the Raladon VMAX matchup, so that is something worthwhile to look into. I do want to see how their day played out if they did end up playing against any Arceus Raladon and if it worked out. So we do see that they played against an Arceus Raladon. They were able to win. They did end up tying a couple Arceus Raladon, and that's fine. The ties were just to make it into cut because they had an 8-1 start, and then they had to only go 2-1-2 in order to make it. They did beat another Arceus Raladon, so triple Psychic does historically do very well in that matchup. We're going to be moving on to iStark, again, a player that regularly makes top cut. We are going to see Arceus Raladon again. You can see this list looks like a blend between the other two lists that we've seen, very similar to the ones that we've been seeing at the Full Grip games and the one that Riley Holbert was able to win with. So shout out to iStark for always crushing it out. I see them in top 8 pretty much every single week now, so it's great. We're going to be moving on to another Ice Rider. Ice Rider really making a lot of popularity. Pedro Vincencio? I could be butchering the name. I'm sorry, I'm the worst at pronouncing names. Again, we're looking at a very similar list to what Jonathan Patricio played. My list is a little bit different. I don't play any of the Crobat or Suicune right now, but overall this list is looking pretty crispy. I do like how it played out, or how it's looking, so solid job to them. I want to see how their day played out with the Ice Rider. 7-2, losing to Malamar and Arceus Raichu. The 3-1-1. Beating a Jolteon, a Mew, and then losing to Mew. I mean, Mew can pretty much beat anything, so that's something to consider. We are going to be moving back in here, so let's see exactly what else we can find. I'm losing the events, but here we are. We're back into it. Fernello playing another Arceus Malamar deck, so we could see that Ben Lulu Bro was not the only one playing this deck. We do see it here with the Bibarel. And that looks pretty cool there. Again, similar to what we saw with Ben, going with more of a Crushing Hammer build. I think that this deck, there's something special with the deck. I haven't necessarily touched upon it, so I can't necessarily figure out what's going on beyond a deck building standpoint. But right now, this list looks pretty cool, and I think playing disruptive cards is really good. I do like Path to the Peak with this deck more than I like Collapse Stadium, but maybe Collapse Stadium is a little bit better. We'll have to see how that plays out. Shout out to Fernello. We're going to be moving on to Anti, my Shuffle Squad teammate, and another one of the homies playing arguably the most up-to-date version of Arceus Inteleon. So the goal of this deck is to really just attack with Arceus, 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 offering up those 3 Pokemon, giving it VMAX like HP with Big Charm. And if you play against a Mew, you could go Path to the Peak Marnie, you can Charon's Care Heal, search your deck whatever you're looking out for Drizzile. So it's just a very consistent version of Arceus. Techs like Farfetch'd and Dunsparce are pretty cool too. And there's really nothing wrong with this build at all. After this event, it seemed like every single player has switched over to this build because of its success, and it's continuously proving its success, which showed that it's really like an archetype in the making. I did see a couple versions of this deck otherwise seeing success before, but not as much success as what Anti-Logan McKay has brought to this deck. And they actually won the On Guard 100+ player event the next day with this deck after losing in the finals, showing you how versatile they are as a player and how strong they are. We are going to go all the way into the finals. We have Augusto. So fun fact, Augusto was able to make it last week into the finals, and here they are again. Regular players seeing a lot of success at these events, like regularly at the top tables. Their list is pretty cool. They got a Peony. I'm not necessarily a fan, but I can search out things like Echoing Horn. Overall, their list looks very teched for what their playstyle is, and that's something you'll see with a lot of players who are playing these types of decks. So I think this is cool. I do want to run through their run to see exactly what it could look like first, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So they had an amazing day one where they won 5-0. I don't know why they tied. I do not like when players tie to make it into day two, or into phase two, I should say. You want to get as many match points as possible phase one, and since 5-3-1 is a generally weaker record than what you could get, you want to try to gather as many points as possible. They ended up going 6-1-2, or 6-1-2, yeah, and making it through, facing a lot of Mews, which is kind of tough. Then they went 3-0-2 in order to make it. Again, just beating a lot of Arceus Moltres decks. You can kind of beat anything. Ice Rider, Arceus. Overall, having a wonderful day. So shout out to Augusto. Kind of the rule of thumb, don't tie if you don't need to tie. Sometimes you got to go for the points, and that can put you in a higher position. If you're wondering why you're not necessarily, you might be advancing to phase two, you might not be advancing to top 8 or top 16, that might be why. But otherwise, if your goal is to be making phase two, or if you're streaming or anything like that, that's totally cool too. Feel free to play, but from a competitive standpoint, it's typically better not to tie, unless you're tying into some kind of cash position. So yeah, lots of great players, lots of great decks. We cover these events every single week. Late Night Season 4 starts next Monday. We have the Invitational this upcoming Monday, so that's going to be really cool. New time is going to be 6 p.m. start for Season 4 at Eastern Time, so we'll see how that plays out. Beyond that, keep on participating, keep on supporting the events. Appreciate everything. I'll catch up with everyone later. Peace out and have a great one.